Howdy. Well, we hear about education all the time, don't we? We turn on the news. We hear how we're failing. The kids are failing. The parents are failing. And God knows the teachers are all failing. Everything is failing. And I ask the question, are the people failing, or is the system itself failing us? Let's take a look. This is a picture of a classroom in 1905. You can see that kids are in rows. The teacher is there in the back of the room, blackboards. And this classroom experience was designed for this workplace, factory, where you see the supervisor and people just sitting at the table for hour after hour doing repetitive work. Well, here's a problem. For just a moment, assume time travel is possible. Plop a peasant down in a modern dairy farm, and he would recognize nothing but the cows. A physician of the 13th century would run screaming from a modern operating room. Galileo could only gape and mutter, touring NASA's Johnson Space Center. Columbus would quake with terror in a nuclear sub, but a 15th century teacher from the University of Paris would feel right at home in a Berkeley classroom. We have not upgraded our educational system for a long time, and it's time to do so. You see, the skills that are required in this operation here include practicing skills, ability to work quickly, ability to follow instructions. These are skills for the manufacturing age, but we no longer are in the manufacturing age. In fact, our workplaces look more like this today. And the skills that are required to be in this type of environment include critical thinking and problem solving, communication, collaboration, and creativity and innovation, also known as the 4 C's. We need to stress in our schools these abilities rather than the memorization and the mind-numbing work that we now do in schools. And we have to get away from this idea of acquisition of knowledge. In the past, if you think about it, if we had to remember something, we had to actually memorize it. We couldn't carry all those textbooks around. Could you imagine? Now, I don't need all those textbooks. I have this. Now it's about what do I do with the information I'm looking at. But our schools have not caught up. Our curricula have not caught up to that concept. And if not, what we're doing is just sending a lot of college students, high school students, out into the world unarmed and ready for the 21st century job market that awaits them. You see, one of the problems is that our knowledge is expanding. In 1964, we would be able to know or memorize what we knew. But as time goes on, we keep doubling and tripling the knowledge of our human society. And what's happening now is that we've outgrown the ability to learn all of those things in school in 12 years. And Dr. Marzano says clearly that if we were going to learn all the TEKS that are in the required curriculum in the state of Texas, people would have to be in school until the age of 27. But yet we have teachers every single day trying to put 27 years of work in 12. Thus, students are losing all of this knowledge, all of the fun, all of the excitement of learning, just to memorize it, only to forget it the next day. So, this should be familiar to everybody. We've all played one side or the other. I'm supposed to tell you at this point that this story is not true, that my daughter who's sitting in the audience, said this did not happen. So we're sitting in the car for the first time, and you remember, parents, if you're on the right side of this vehicle, you're praying at this point. Your child is sitting on the left side, adjusting the mirrors, playing with the seat 3-4 times. The worst thing that happened to me was when my daughter asked me, Dad, once again, which one's the gas pedal and which one's the brake? And then I appreciated the fact that once she started to move the car, I didn't need a chiropractor because the car just kept jerking back and forth. And she pulls out of the driveway and hits the moving tree. Well, she told me that it was the moving tree. And so on that day, I give her a 40 for her ability to drive. 2 months later, because some way, somehow, I couldn't believe it, but I sat back in the car with her again. Got in the car. This time she missed the moving tree, but swerved around the neighbor's son and hit some bushes. I'll give her a 60 because she didn't kill anyone. Now, 3 months after that, wow, we're driving on the highway, on the interstate. We're from Austin, 35. You know how traffic is during rush hour. She's doing 80 miles an hour on 35 in rush hour. I'm going to give her an 80 only because the police officer who pulled this over didn't think she had skills, but I thought she had real skills. So now let's pretend that these grades are in any American high school across this country, a 40, a 60, and an 80. What would her final grade be? That's right, a 60, a failure. Even though she has improved her driving ability 100%, we're still going to fail her because we can continue to average grades in school. Because learning is not the most important thing. It's about rank and sorting. And if we want to make the change to the 4 C's, we're going to have to change how we grade our students so that we make the premium about the growth mindset. So this is a chart that changed my career when Billy Donegan from High Schools at Work shared it with me. This may be another problem. We have a 10-question quiz where a student gets 5 questions right. What's the grade? Of course, let's take a look at it one more time. You have a student with 3 questions with divisibility rules, didn't get any right. 2 questions with the greatest common factor, 2 right. 2 simplifying fractions, got 2 right. 3 prime and composite, 1 right. Okay, so what are we going to put on the top of this paper? That's right, we're going to put a 50. Wow. Is that 50 really represent the knowledge of this child? Does this child know absolutely nothing? Failure? Or did the child actually have 2 skills pretty well down pat at a mastery level? Might be. And needs help in one a little bit and may need a lot of help in another. But our report cards don't look that way. We see the 50. And of course, the teacher slaps the 50 on the report card, and then electronically today that goes home, and a parent will say something like I did, and say something smart like, why didn't you study? Why don't you study harder? And of course, what follows is the feet going up the steps, then the slamming of the door, and everyone is upset, when in reality, it isn't the fact that, that the child didn't learn, they're not there yet. And if we had report cards that look like this, instead of averaging and putting a 50 on a paper, but can show us where on earth each of these skills are in relation to where the child is in their learning process, we could do a whole lot better. And maybe, just maybe, we wouldn't have so many math-phobic people out there if we graded in this manner. See, standards-based grading talks to the issue of growth. The old system was rank and sort. It was very important back in the day to pick the right people to work on the floor versus the people who are in management. Today, we don't want to do that anymore. Today, it's about collaboration. Today, it's about a different work environment. And some of these ideals, I don't remember any of these anyone having a problem with it. Yes, we would want to have a culture that motivates students to achieve more. Yes, we want supporting further learning. So how come we don't do it? Hold that thought. We also know that students must practice to get to those high levels, but the work itself has to be at a high level too. It cannot be memorization. We have students across the country right now who are in classes not because they're interested in a topic, not because they love what they're learning, but because they think it may be good to a college recruiter to get a 4.5 GPA so they could get in the college of their choice. It isn't about learning. It just isn't. And the idea is that what is worth learning must take time, must be in depth. And we cannot continue to do it by taking that test on Friday, memorizing all of the information, and then on Saturday forgetting all about it, which is what most school students are doing right now. And these are the kind of ridiculous statements we're making in classrooms to justify why we're boring kids to death. Some of them are, well, it's on the test and you better know it. I like this one because I said so. Every teenager wants to hear an adult say that one. When you get older, you'll understand why it's important. If you want to pass the class, you better do it. And finally, if you want to get into that great college. These are not good reasons to learn something. This is not engaging learning. This is, again, a ranking and sorting and playing points rather than being interested in something, learning it well, and being able to express yourself in front of other people, which is the 21st century set of skills. So I challenged my teachers in the school, and I asked them this question. Is what you're doing in your classroom relevant? And I told them, I gave them a challenge. I said, guys, why don't you think of this? If you assign something to a student, if you assign something, and you're the only person that's ever going to read that assignment, don't give it. For example, we could have teachers really and truly give them an assignment to solve a problem, post that solution on the web, and actually have other people comment on it in a global society. We don't have to just turn the paper into the teacher to put a number on it to hand it back, only to forget about it. Could you imagine, instead of spending hours and hours and hours studying and memorizing things, that we asked our kids today to solve the problems in our communities, taking that same amount of time, how many problems we would get solved? Rather than going through the motions just so that we can get into a good high school, just so we can get to a good college, so we can get out to a job that we don't know. And this is our problem. And if we continue this system and this cycle, what we're going to find out is that our kids will not be prepared for the 21st century. The other issue that's going on in education today is this idea that students have to be head ready for class. We have students who are dealing with incredible problems, but have not been taught how to deal. And any kid, doesn't matter what level of scholastic level they've reached, all kids have issues and problems that they have to address. And if they don't learn how to address them, it will affect their grades. And if kids are not head ready, no matter who the teacher is, that student will struggle, may drop out, may move on, or may just walk through life. So there's a corporation right now that's doing some wonderful work, and it is CASEL, Collaborative for Academic, Social, and Emotional Learning. And what they're saying is that the idea is that we have to marry social emotional learning with the academic world. Both skills are just as important. And these skills look like this. These, in the 21st century, because we're talking about collaboration and workplace and communication, these are the reasons why you will keep your job. Your credential will get you through the door, but if you don't have these skills, you won't keep your job. And these are been called soft skills, and they should not be. They're not soft at all. These are the 21st century skills. And for the students out there, I can tell you that it is predicted that 40% of the jobs that will be available to you in the year 2020 will be entrepreneurial. It will be more important for you to have these skills than maybe even the credential you're earning today. It is not about that academics should be lowered or we should reduce the rigor, but we have to find a way of doing both. So now we have the problem of testing itself. And this is from my hometown newspaper, and it's kind of embarrassing that tests are critically important because they deliver crucial diagnostic information about whether a teacher, a school, or a district is doing its job. When did we get to this? This is not correct. The reason why we give assessment is to figure out where a student is so we can move him or her to the next level. It is not to check up on people. The purpose of education is not to measure them so we can create nice charts and rank everybody. It is really about customization and individualization to make sure every child, all children, can succeed. And it is language like this that will not move us forward. So here's the question. Does this exist anywhere? Well, as I told you before, I started this movement in 2008 at Crockett High School. And when I took over the school, it was teetering on making the grade and not. Well, since we implemented standards-based grading, since we implemented social emotional learning embedded in the curriculum, since we talked about changing the type of assignments we give in school, these are the results. A graduation rate that goes up 16%, a dropout rate that drops by 3.5 per year, an attendance rate that goes up, and a home suspension rate that drops by 600 students in a year. When kids are excited about learning, when kids see the purpose behind learning, when kids want to be in school, great things will happen. It is when we try to sell them this story that just jump through the hoops and somehow there's a magic rainbow at the end of the day, that's when we get into trouble. So, in conclusion, I have a friend who's the head cardiologist at St. David's, the chief. And God forbid one day I may have a heart attack and be wheeled in. And he'll turn to me and say, well, I have two options for you. Option one, quite easily, I could do the 1960-70 surgery, cut you open, fix the problem, sew you back up, and maybe in 3 months you'll leave the hospital, probably infected a couple of times. Or we could instead work in this kind of operating room with precision, walk out of that hospital the same day I walk in, ready to go to work in 1 or 2 days. No one would take the old system. No one would ever want to go through that kind of agony if they didn't have to. However, in the world of education, we continue to go back to the old days and hold on to them as if they were the best in the world. And in today's environment, they're not. We need to give up our traditions in our education and be purposeful about our learning. We have to stop educational malpractice. And we have to have the courage to actually change what we're doing in our schools. Thank you very much.